Hey, welcome back. I know Danny hates it when I say that, but I'm going to say it anyway because, it's my show. I can say what I want, right? Um, Kind of have some heavy stuff to talk about today. And it's conversation that's come up with friends and family over the weekend. Um, and so I think that it's something, I don't know, maybe I just need to talk about it. Maybe it's just on my heart heavy. Maybe it's a discussion that we can have, but who's right? Who's right? Um, and I preface that. Well, I'm not even prefacing that question, but I'm talking about the Bible. I'm talking about what we've been taught, what we've heard, what we've read, what we've seen. It's all left up to interpretation. And here's where I'm going with that. You all know, I mean, I've made it clear from one of the very beginning podcasts that I did, and if you're just now tuning in, then this will be a surprise to you. But I am bisexual, and I've been that way as early as I remember my earliest memory at, 5 years old. The hot girls on MTV, I mean, all that stuff, right? And it's just part of who I am. I had a girlfriend for a very long period of time. She was a very important part of my life. She still is. We're still very good friends. But we have 4 sons, and our youngest, Gage, is gay. And it comes up in conversation with friends and family sometimes. And, I do want to say there's a lot of things that I've talked about my mom and things like that. And I'm trying not to squirrel, but I want to make sure that I get these pieces in. My mom is the one person that's loved me unconditionally for who I am. And even knowing I was bisexual, she never said anything. She never made a big deal out of it. Same thing with my son. I personally had a hard time with it simply because I know how hard of a path it is to go down that direction. It's not the norm, right? And it makes for a harder life, and it makes for more difficult decisions and things like that. But I don't love him less for it, right? I love him for being strong and God being who he is, and he's just such a great soul. But he struggles with believing in God because of the hypocrisy that comes along with it. And I struggled with that for a long time too, right? Because, oh, well, if you're gay, you're not going to go to heaven. I mean, it's a sin, right? But it's in the Old Testament. And so this is where all my questions come in. Like, yes, it's in the Old Testament, but didn't Jesus die on the cross for us to be forgiven of our sins? For like, aren't we past that? Haven't we moved on? Like, a sin is a sin. You've been divorced, it's a sin. Um, you've murdered someone, it's a sin. A sin is a sin, and no one sin is greater than the other. It doesn't carry a bigger score, right? But then in the New Testament, it teaches us, God teaches us one of the most important commandments. He says this, one of the most important commandments is love thy neighbor. Does that mean not love the gay people too? I mean, this is what I'm tripping about, y'all. We had a very long conversation with some friends of ours this past weekend, and it brought up a lot of questions, because their view on it is it's still wrong. It's in the Bible. It's a sin. It's wrong. And then in talking to family, they're like, "But why? Doesn't Jesus tell us to love thy neighbor, and Jesus loves little children, all the little children of the world?" I mean, no wonder these kids have such a hard time with church and going to church. I mean, Who knows what's right? Who knows what's wrong? I mean, man put the Bible together. We know this, right? Yes, it is the gospel. Yes, it is the teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ and God and the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I get that. And listen, I am not a scholar on the Bible. I've been working on that. I've been learning. I've learned more in the past year with the Bible, doing the ministry with my friend Holly, than I've ever learned in my life, and she makes it interesting, and it's it's good stuff. But you guys, how do you know what's what, right? I mean, we also know there's a chapter in that was in the Bible that man who put the Bible together as a book excluded, which is the chapter of Mary. There were things that they didn't want us to know, right? So what else was excluded? And that's the question. Like, it's talked about in the Old Testament about being gay as a sin, but when you talk about Jesus's 10 commandments, gay's not in there. Thou shalt not murder, steal, uh, commit adultery. I mean, those are all things that, but never once does it say, thou shalt not be gay. So no wonder my son has such a hard time, right? The hypocrisy. I mean, the God I believe in loves me. He loves me unconditionally. We're all sinners. None of us are perfect, right? When we get to those pearly gates, what does it look like for you? Does it look like, and that was another part of the conversation with friends and family. What does it look like for you? Is it this big banquet where, and I know some of you, well, most of you won't get this reference, but is it this big banquet where, Mrs. Lomax is coming to greet you with a smile on her face with open arms, and you get to see all the people that you miss? Ooh, that just made me think of my grandmother. Sorry. I need a second. I miss her a lot. What is it? What do you see? Do you see a banquet of all the people that had left before you? Do you spend your day, sorry, I have to get a tissue, and they're out of camera sight. Do you spend your day worshiping Jesus, worshiping God? Is it a party? Are you, if you like to fish, are you getting to fish all day? That's what my uncle was saying. He said, if, heaven for me is going to be me in a fishing pole, with my dad. And what does heaven look like to you? We all have so many different perceptions of how we view things, how we see things, how we're taught things, and it's all different. But it all comes down to one simple word from Jesus. Love thy neighbor. Why can't we do that? What are we doing here? Why are we teaching someone that because they love someone of the same sex that they don't belong, that they don't belong in our church? Um, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't go to church. Uh, uh, Danny made a really good point the other day. He said a church is where one or more people are worshiping. And I understand church is about fellowship, but we've never been in that place of fellowship. We've always been the outcasts. We've always been the outspoken ones. We've been the ones that people don't want to hang out with, and and I'm okay with that. That happens in my business as well. Um, And maybe that's something I need to fix within myself, and that's, the common denominator for whatever happens with the alienation in the church and the groups and the people that I'm around sometimes. But people don't want to hear the truth, right? They just want to believe what they want to believe. And it's why we don't fit in, because we question the truth and we question the book and we question the word. And isn't that what we're supposed to do as human beings, right? I mean, obviously we want to have faith and we want to trust. I mean, I believe in God. I mean, I've asked for forgiveness of my sins, like, and I don't even know if that's going to get me into heaven, right? I mean, he might stick me in a timeout and make me think about some stuff. Hell, that may be for all of us, right? And maybe for my friend, if it were one of her children that were gay, maybe she would have a different outlook, right? Um, because I think it is different. Like, the God, I'm spinning circles, y'all. I'm sorry. But like the Methodist Church, they had the huge split between, having gay clergy and the United Methodist and then I don't know, the whatever they split into, right? It's the stupidest stuff on the planet. You literally split a church because of who someone loved. And Jesus said, "Love thy neighbor." It's it's so simple, but we misconstrue it. They're still human beings. They still have a heart. They still have feelings. They still have a soul. They still have a brain. I mean, the thought that simply because my son loves or loved, because they're not together anymore, but simply because my son loves someone of the same sex of him, that he's going to go to hell. I think that's one of the worst things to ever say about someone. And that's basically what you're insinuating, right? Is that, well, it's a sin. Well, if all sins are the same, does it count that he was baptized when he was 14 and that was his choice? We used to go to church all the time. We used to do this. And now he says he's an atheist because he doesn't believe, because there's too much scientific stuff. And we went through this with our second to oldest son Colin, and I think I mean, my God, seriously, who has not struggled with faith? I mean, listen, if you've had a pretty beautiful life and you've never had struggles or problems and you've never been molested and you've never been raped or you've never had drug addiction in your life or you've never had parents with addiction problems, like, more power to you. You are probably, I don't even know how I want to say that, because I don't want to say you're the luckiest person, because everything that I've been through has made me who I am today, right? But I mean, I guess good for you that you had a life like that, but that's not how it works for everyone else. That's not how it works for a lot of people, right? So how do you tell your kid that it's okay to love Jesus and that he's going to love you back when you have all these other people saying, no, he's not going to love you back? You know, there's something in my life that if you're nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you. If you're respectful of me, I'm going to be respectful of you. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you're bi. I don't care if you're pan. I don't care if you're whatever it is, right? If you're nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you. And one of the conversation with family last night was, what would this world be like if people were just kind to each other? I mean, y'all, there are some horribly mean people in this world. And I know there has to be evil, right? There has to be evil for there to be good. There has to be that opposite, but that kindness starts with us. that's a choice. You know, you can choose to flip somebody off on the road. I tell that to Danny all the time. He's like the worst road rage person driver like seriously, he gets really mad. And I'm like, "But what if they're having a bad day?" Or what if they were thinking about their parent that they just lost and they were just lost? Well, yeah, I mean, probably they shouldn't be driving, but we do get lost in our thoughts and we make stupid decisions or we're not paying attention because we have our phone and, there's distractions on the road with, 4,000 pound, vehicles, right? But kindness always wins. But going back to the whole church thing, it's why we don't go. And Christians are it's not even Christians. All of us are hypocritical, right? All of us all of us judge. That's another one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not judge. What are you doing then? If you're not judging, right? What are you doing? Like take the plank out of your own eye, right? Before you talk about the one in your brother's eye or however that goes, you get the gist. Love thy neighbor, thou shalt not judge. Why are those so hard to understand? Why is it so hard for you to accept people that are different than you? Why is it so hard for people to accept those of us that are different? I guess that's the biggest question. Why is that? Is it fear? Is it not knowing? Is it a f- I don't know. I don't know. I have a very good friend of mine. He was my boyfriend years and years and years ago, and he's married to another friend of mine, and they have a boyfriend they've brought into the situation, and I have never seen a more happy, smiling, vivacious thruple, for lack of a better term, ever. Like, this guy he just lost his dog and his dad in the same day, and he has the biggest heart in the whole world. And yes, Carrie, I'm talking about you. He has the biggest heart in the whole world. And I can't imagine, like, watching some of the things that he does for people. I can't imagine that when he gets to heaven, God's gonna be like, "Nope, you're going to hell because you loved a man." Are you kidding me? Like, are we really serious about that? Is that what you think our God is gonna do? We have a lot of soul searching to do in this world. Why is it just so hard to accept other people for who they are? This has been so heavy on my heart because there's so many interpretations, there's so many perspectives, there's so many different ways you can look at it. There's so many different ways everybody's been taught. Which is the right way? I mean, are we gonna get to heaven and he's gonna be like, "Ha, y'all got it all wrong. That's not even what I meant. That's not what I said. Like, all of you have it wrong." That's probably more of the reality that's gonna happen, right? And, they talk about the 7 years of tribulation, like he's gonna come down and one will be here and one will be left, and we're going through Matthew 25 in our ministry with the kids, and, um, it's kinda scary to listen to all of that and to read that stuff, and you kinda fear for what's gonna happen to me, right? I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. But the only thing we can do every day is wake up and try to be a better person, right? And try not to judge people. And something else that I was listening to today is, we get so wrapped up in what we don't have, especially with social media and seeing all the perfect things that everybody posts. We get so wrapped up in what we don't have that we struggle with knowing the things that we do have. So whenever you start telling yourself like, okay, this isn't happening for me, then you got to come up with a list of all the things that do happen for you, a list of the things that you're thankful for. Hell, you should be thankful every morning that you woke up and you have another day of life, right? I mean, that's the first thing every morning. I mean, go outside and open your eyes and look to the sky. I mean, the birds and the trees and the clouds and the beauty that God has given us. We have so much to be thankful for, yet we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. I had another friend of mine tell me that she completely got off social media, like, she didn't delete her accounts, but she quit looking at social media because she was starting to question who she was, and she was starting to question, this is kind of a different topic, but she was starting to question, like, who she was, and she was trying to be very careful of what she said, and that's not how she is, right? She's a very you think I'm unfiltered, what you should meet my friend Dixie, because she is, the most unfiltered person on the planet. But, she just got to the point where she's like, why am I doing this? And she said she's the happiest that she's been in a long time not being on social media. Just the expectation and all of it. Like, what are we doing to ourselves as a society, as a culture, what are we teaching our kids? You got 3-year-old TikTok stars. Do you think Jesus is going to care about any of that when we get up there? One of the things, and I'm gonna grab it from my Bible really fast, because one of the things that we talked about that I want to bring up um, we talked about this last week, and I have to get my glasses on to read it. Sorry. Um, we talked about, where you're to these kids, like, where does your moral compass point you to? And and we asked about, like, what is God calling on you to care for, or what has God given you to take care of until he returns? And I've been thinking about that. That's been on my mind. What has God given you to take care of until he returns? Like, and that goes like through verse Matthew 25, verse 45 through 50, where he's talking about, are you watching out for your family, or are you the servant whose master was away for too long and doesn't care anymore? And are you the person causing the chaos and the problems, right? And not protecting people from it. What has God given you to take care of until he returns? Whew, that's heavy. God has given me my children to take care of and to teach. And what I choose to teach my kids is love. And isn't that what God said? Love thy neighbor? I choose love. I choose to care for my children and teach them values of being kind to people, even when they've had a bad day, of loving on people, even when maybe they're not. Let me let me tell you a story. My oldest son, Brighton, he called me a couple of Saturdays ago and he said, hey, he said, I'm going to come by. I have some food for you. He said, but I want to tell you the story because I don't want you to, I could lie to you and tell you that I got you this food, but then I'd get there and it'd be cold." He said, "So I want to tell you this story." And he tells me the story of how he delivers medical supplies um, for a company, for a medical supply company. And he delivered some supplies to this little old lady. And he told her, he just thought, something kind to say, right? And he told her, "Well, I think your bracelet's really pretty. It matches your eyeglasses." And he said, this lady was probably 85 years old, and she just looked at him and she said, "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time." And she just leaned into him and he just hugged her back, right? And she cried on his shoulder, just cried. And he said she probably cried for like 15 seconds. He said, "Mom, this was like, she wasn't a very clean lady. She didn't have all her teeth. Like, she kind of looked like, she reminded me of what like a witch would look like from, your fairy tales and things like that, your fairy tale stories." And he said, "But in that moment she just needed somebody to hold her." And he said, "And I was so glad to do that for her." And he said, I left her stuff with her and she's been on my mind for a few days. So I went to Chick-fil-A and I used my reward points and I drove out to Brownsboro to where she lives to take her lunch. I wanted to do something nice for her." And he said, "She wasn't home." He said, "So I just figured I'd bring the food to you." But he said, "And I could have played it off like, 'Oh yeah, I went and picked you up some food, Mom.'" But I mean, that's what God has given me to take care of until he returns. That's the kindness. That's what we teach our children, that when you see someone fall, help them up, right? If you're walking down the road and you see somebody's trash can turned over, pick it up. Just be kind. Like our trash guys drove around this neighborhood the other day and they must have had a new dude because there were like 7 or 8 trash cans knocked over. Well, there's a lot of elderly people in our neighborhood. So I stopped everyone along the way and picked up those trash cans. I'm not trying to like toot my horn, but it doesn't take much to be kind, to just do something for someone else. So that's what I teach my children. I teach my children to love. I teach our family to love and to be kind and to do nice things for people. Isn't that what Jesus wanted for us? So why are we spending all this time being mean and hateful and judgmental and hiding behind a computer and typing ugly words to people to make them feel like shit about themselves? I have a message that I sent out for my business not too long ago. And this lady came back and she was just real hateful. She's like, "You're annoying." And I just responded to her and I said, "Thank you so much for making me feel like a piece of shit. I can't tell you how much I needed that today for my day. I hope you have a wonderful day." Probably not how I should have responded to it, but I did. Hurt people, and not hurt people, right? It takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. So when you see that person, I think about this all the time. Like, I always make sure if I'm leaving a store, I hold the door for someone or I look at them in the eyes and I smile and I say hello, because what if you're the only person? What if you're the only person that smiled or spoke to that person that day? Like, how would you feel if you were that person? Like, my God, take your freaking head out of your ass and pay attention that there's people and human beings around you, and God just wants us to love each other. Stop picking each other apart, but just love. Why is that so freaking hard? It makes me so mad. We are all God's children. That's what we are taught, that we're all God's children. Some of us are going to go against the fray. We have free will. But here's my last question. If God is all knowing, then doesn't he already know? Doesn't he already know your heart? Doesn't he already know who you are? Why are we counting on society to tell us who we are if God already knows? Life could be so much simpler if we would all just be kind. Open a door for someone, smile at someone, pick your head up out of your damn phone, smile, look at someone in the eyes. I mean, like, send a nice message to someone. What if you're the only person who gives anybody, one person, the light, any light for that day? What if it's been a week since someone had someone, like, have you ever had to live that life? And for those of you out there that do live that life, I'm so sorry that there's not more of us that talk to you or speak to you or engage with you. What have we done to ourselves? Technology. Technology's done a lot of it to us. We know that. But I don't believe for 1 second, and y'all are welcome to have a conversation in the comments with this, but I do not believe for 1 second that my son is gonna go to hell because he loves another man. You can't convince me of that. You can't, even in my gut, in my heart, in my soul, you can't convince me of that. Because the God I love and the God that loves me for who I am. Imagine how many people don't believe that. Imagine how many people don't have the confidence to believe that. What do you think their lives are like? Are you one of those people that judges everybody? Are you one of those people that think one sin is greater than the other? Because we're all sinners, and sin splatters everywhere. Anyway, this was some hard stuff. It was some heavy stuff, but it's been wearing on me this week. And I wanted to just get it out there and find out. And I would love to know what everybody thinks about that. Um, but I will say this, if you don't have anything intelligent emotionally, let me rephrase that. If you don't have anything emotionally intelligent to say, then keep it to yourself. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to disagree with me. But if you don't have emotional intelligence enough to have a conversation about this and be respectful of everybody's opinions, then just don't. Just turn this off and don't say anything at all, because that's what the world needs way less of, is people like that. Anyway, totally unfiltered today. Thank you for listening. Seriously. You know where you can find us: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the whole 9 yards, YouTube. Um, I am I'm gonna take some time today to spend some more time with this, my Bible. I think it's important. And I'm not a holy roller in any way, shape, or form, but I feel like this is helping me be a better person, right? It makes me want to be better. It makes me want to do better. I don't know what else to say. So I'm just going to peace out from here. Love you guys. Peace out, homies.